Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel. The name of the game today, we're going to get started on LS swapping the 1998 Jeep XJ Cherokee that we just got in with a customer from Texas. Now you'll notice behind me in the shop, this is not a Jeep XJ. This is actually E39 Dining that I picked up a little while ago. And I spent the weekend doing a whole bunch of maintenance on it. I was thinking about making a video on it, but I didn't really feel like doing it, to be honest, and I know right now E39 content definitely isn't the most popular thing on my channel, but I figured real quick I would just show you what I did. Now the main reason why I started this whole project is because there was a pretty massive coolant leak on this thing when I bought it. I knew it was there and I actually got a little bit better price on the car because of the coolant leak, but it was kind of a pain in the butt to fix. It actually took me like 2.5 days to do it because I repaired the coolant leak, but I also did a whole bunch of other stuff. Because with a BMW, it's kind of like, while you're in there, you might as well do it. So over here, I've got the pile of old parts. Now the coolant leak was primarily due to these two connections right here, 1 and 2. Now these are plastic cooling pipes that actually sit below the intake manifold. You can't even really see them, but the intake manifold does have to come off and they sit way down in there inside the engine bay. Anyway, for some reason, BMW in their infinite wisdom decided to make these out of plastic. And it held up. I mean, the car is like over 20 years old and it's done nearly 60,000 miles. So I guess it doesn't surprise me that it broke, but it's plastic. There's supposed to be normally 2 O-rings on the end there. And you can kind of see it's just totally degraded. So we did 2 new cooling tubes. We did low radiator hose, that was actually leaking. Upper radiator hose as well. We did a PCV valve because the intake came off. Not shown here is the starter. I threw a new starter in it and did a new power steering pump, power steering reservoir, the power steering hoses that go between the reservoir and the rack, and then between the reservoir and the cooler return up front, just because they're like, I think they had been replaced by a low quality hose at some point, and they just kind of swell and they get like, you guys probably have seen how rubber does when it gets oil on it for a long time. It gets super soft and spongy and it makes it leak even worse. So anyway, I just got it back together this morning. It took me, like I said, it's a 2.5 day job by the time you pull off the intake, and I was messing around with the PCV valve. I couldn't get the little quick connect plastic thing to sit on there properly, so I had to take the intake back off. So major relief that the job is done. So now it's time to get the Beamer outside and then get the Jeep back inside and get started on the fun stuff. But before we get to that, quick shameless merch plug of the day. Head on over to tolmanperformance.com. Hats, that's the featured thing for today. They're really useful to keep the sun out of your eyes, and if you're in your early 30s and you're balding way more than you should be, they're also good to cover that up and, I don't know, stop your head from getting sunburned or something like that. So, not that I know anything about that, but head on over tolmanperformance.com. So let's get this car outside, the XJ inside, and we'll get to work. Like I had mentioned in my previous upload, the owner of the Jeep already did all the teardown work. So the engine, the transmission, the transfer case, the shifter, the cooling system, everything has already been removed, basically giving me a blank canvas to work from. All I'm really doing is just removing the kind of annoying stuff that's in the way, the power steering lines, the engine wiring harness, and a few other odds and ends like the AC, one of the AC hard lines and the heater core lines. Just we'll get it out of the way. Some of that stuff will go back in, some won't, but it just makes my job a lot easier and gives me a little bit more room to work without just extra wires and stuff kind of dangling in my way. The very last thing to come off is the original 4-liter straight 6 engine mounts that bolt onto the frame rail. Now, for what it's worth, this XJ Cherokee and pretty much all Cherokees, I think, use a unibody construction, which is basically where there's no frame that's separate from the body. It's all riveted, or not riveted, it's all spot welded together in one big giant shell or assembly. You know, pickup trucks usually use frame on body construction, and SUVs, some like the Jeeps here, use unibody construction. So anyway, the frame mounts bolt directly to the body in the same exact way that the original straight 6 stuff did. And these are made by Novak, and like I said, they'll fall right into place. There's 2 studs there. There's probably 4, 5, 6 or 7 other bolts that hold it in there. And all the hard work is already done, the engineering, the design work, and it just allows the engine to drop right into place. And that's always the hardest part of any engine swap, is figuring out where it's going to go, front to back, side to side, and have the right angle for the drive lines. And it's already done, it's already figured out. So that's going to make this job really a bolt together conversion. There's not a whole lot of custom fabrication for this entire job, start to finish. Probably the only custom fab work is going to be doing the exhaust, and you know, I love doing exhaust, so I'm excited to get to that point. But before we obviously get to exhaust, we've got to get the engine in place, and that's my major goal for the day, is just to get the engine sitting under the hood. You know, it might not be permanent, it might have to come back out for who knows what, but like I said, today the goal is just to get the engine in. So what I need to do now is get the mounts bolted onto the frame, both sides, and then I'll get the matching part of the mount bolted onto the block, then we can hook up the engine and lower it in and see if it's going to fit. So we got a lot accomplished and the engine and transmission is put together and hopefully it's ready to go into the Jeep for the first and final time. If we're lucky, which hopefully we are. So I'll just kind of get you caught up on all the stuff that we've done so far before we get this thing put together. The first thing obviously was the motor mounts, getting those bolted into the chassis of the Jeep. Overall went pretty straightforward. Most of the holes lined up perfectly. These two here, I did have to drill them out, but the instructions do say that you're gonna have to do that. There is an existing hole in the pinch weld here. It's just like the two layers of the pinch weld are offset a little bit, so just a 1/2 inch drill bit run through there real quick. We'll let those go in. As far as hardware with the kit goes, they did include some 1/2 inch grade 5 bolts that go down here and on the bottom here, but they didn't include anything up here. So I just went to the hardware store and I grabbed some 1/2 inch grade 8 fasteners. Also, I grabbed them a little bit shorter, and that's perfect because you can kind of see how there's barely any thread sticking out. Theirs had probably another 1/4 inch on top of that. And I just hate when you have a little bit extra bolts sticking through. It doesn't really look nice to me. Anyway, so we have to get 1, 2, 3, 4, we got 8 1/2 inch grade 8 bolts. These right here, these studs and nuts, that's original hardware. The motor mounts did come with the fasteners that go here, and one back there that you can't see. And those actually go into an existing like nut cert that's on the back side of the Jeep frame rail. So other than that, the mounts went right in, bolted right up. This here does attach to this track bar support rod. And then on this side, the motor mount sandwiches the track bar mount itself, which you can probably see a little bit better on the back side here. Yeah, so this is the track bar support here. These 2 bolts, those are the ones I put in. Nice big washers on there to kind of support everything. This track bar support goes down and underneath the frame, and it meets up with the motor mount. So everything is really nicely built, it's secure, it's tied together. So we should have a rock solid foundation. As far as the rear transmission mount goes right there, that's the one that comes with the Rusty's kit for the Jeep transmission. I'm probably gonna have to modify that to work with the advanced adapters transmission mount, but first we get the engine in. As far as the drivetrain over here goes, everything's put together. You'll notice I did take a few things off the engine. Jimmy did have the headers installed, and I did take those off because you can't get to this one fastener right here on the motor plate on the driver's side. The header comes like right here, which is fine when it's installed. You just actually can't physically install. So I took the headers off, which gives me a little bit more room to work with anyway. I also prefer to use this style of an engine sling instead of the chain diagonally. When you put a chain on there, seems like the engine kind of always wants to twist around on you. So I grabbed this guy. It'll mount it a little bit more securely. Took the coil packs off, headers off, plug wires. That'll give me plenty of room to get everything in. Also, you saw me pull the oil pan off briefly. That's because when the engine came here, there was like 2 or 3 bolts on the oil pan that were loose. And I wasn't quite sure if someone had gone in there and forgotten to put something on. I was worried like maybe the oil pickup tube got disconnected or something like that. So I figured now that the engine's out of the Jeep, it's just a little bit extra work, like 5 minutes to pull that pan off just to make sure everything looks copacetic. It's a little bit dirty. I mean, it is a junkyard motor, but hopefully everything on the bottom end is secure. I just wanted to make sure the oil pickup tube looked like it should or is there, and there's nothing obviously missing. So everything's put together. Oh, the one last thing I will mention is getting the torque converter into the transmission. I struggled with that for a little bit. Usually they just kind of fall right into place. There's 2 or 3 clunks when you get everything lined up. This one, the fit between the pump and the converter snout, it must have been like within 1/1000th or so, because I struggled with that forever to get it lined up perfectly. And then it did take a little bit of force just for me to kind of push it in. You don't have to bang on them or nothing like that, but you do need to have some good firm pressure. So we got it in. And one other thing that you want to make sure of when you're putting an automatic transmission to an engine, I don't care what it is, Honda, Jeep, Chevy, Ford, you always want to make sure that the converter freely spins as you bolt the engine up to the transmission, because if you don't, you're going to break something when you use the bolt to tighten it down. So one thing I always do on the 4L60, it's especially easy since there's a big round access hole on the bottom. Just take your finger, your thumb or something, put it up there. You can feel the converter, and you should be able to easily spin it just with like 1 or 2 fingers up in there. And as long as you can free spin the converter, you're good to go. So engine and transmission are put together. Everything's ready to go in. So wish me luck, because hopefully this is a one and done kind of situation. Now, as far as engine swaps go, I gotta say this is probably one of the easier ones that I've ever had to do. I mean, for the most part, the engine and trans in one piece, it kind of just fell right into place. I did have to put the transmission jack up underneath the back just to kind of help tilt everything up to a horizontal angle. Not a big deal, totally expected to do that. Now, it fits in there pretty good. It is a little bit of a tight fit, but I'll take that any day. Let me show you kind of the tightest spots that you want to look out for if you're gonna try this on your own. Okay, the tightest spots that don't hit are right on the back here where the cylinder head kind of meets the firewall. On that side, you've got maybe like 1/4 of an inch. And then on the opposite side, it's actually a little bit tighter. It doesn't hit, but it's a little tighter. We've got probably maybe, I don't know, 3/16 on that side, right there on that little flange on the firewall. Now there is one spot that we have a load of clearance, and that's right on the back here. And mainly it's because this engine bay was designed for an inline 6. You can kind of see that cutout there where the engine would recess back in there. I mean, you could throw a cat down in there and it would fit no problem. There's one spot that actually does hit and interferes, and I'm not sure if it's an aftermarket part or not, but this track bar bracket support piece right here, this actually does touch the oil pan. It's not by much, but it definitely rubs it, so we're gonna have to do something about that. But overall, that's actually a pretty good fit, and it still has the accessories on it. I was able to put it in with the transmission still attached. On a lot of conversions like this, I'll actually do the engine separately lowered in and then put the transmission up from underneath. But I figured since we got so much space, we got the whole front end of the Jeep apart, and there's no major cross members or anything underneath like there are on, say, an older full frame car that might get in the way. So yeah, it was pretty simple. It basically fell into place. So what we got to do next time, I need to finalize the position of the engine. I'm going to put things on like the radiator just to make sure that we're not going to run into it, because I would like to move the engine ahead just a little bit. On these frame plates, see if I can show you, there's actually 3 separate little slots. Focus in on there. There's actually 3 separate slots in that motor plate, so I can actually move it ahead or back. I'm in the middle one right now. It's probably, I don't know, it's maybe like 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch either way. So if I can move it ahead by about 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch, it'll definitely improve my clearance on the firewall. I don't think anything will actually rub, but it's just a little bit too close for comfort. I'll have to check the exhaust, put the headers on and make sure those are going to clear like they should. The major thing after I get the engine where I want it, I need to build a transmission mount and put the transfer case on just to make sure, once again, everything is going to fit. So we're making progress every day. This is where I'm going to have to call it for this video. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. I know the last XJ LS swap video did very well, so hopefully this is a good topic for you guys. You know what to do. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button, like this video, drop a comment down below, tell me what other projects you'd like to see. I love doing engine swaps, so maybe if you've got something that's a little bit exotic or a little bit odd, let me know. Maybe we can work something out. Maybe I can build your project on the channel here as well. Lastly, head on over to tolmanperformance.com, get yourself a hat to cover up your bald spot. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.